So every place they go now, they have to be vigilant. They have to be on guard to make sure it's safe. They have to now learn to fawn, to adopt roles in order to survive. But deep inside of them, they have a deep rage, a deep anger that is legit. They should be angry because they are not being treated justly, with respect, as equals, with love. Only one person is benefiting, and that's the person in authority. Everybody else is paying for them to stay in that position. Well, welcome to another little chat with Tim. I just came across a new term within the world of complex trauma that I wanted to share with you, and it's called racialized complex trauma. It's now a term that's out there, and I think it's an important term to talk about, and I'll explain why as we go. But racialized complex trauma, it refers to the chronic, layered psychological and emotional wounds that result from repeated exposures to racism, discrimination, systemic oppression, especially when these experiences begin in childhood or are intergenerational. So in other words, it's complex trauma. It's ongoing danger when you grow up in a culture where they look down on your race, your color of your skin, your culture, your background, and then you get treated differently. You get picked on, and it becomes a very unsafe world for you. So there's kind of three ways that this racialized complex trauma can happen. So you can have personal experiences of racism, so ongoing kind of microaggressions that people take shots at you, look down at you, call you names, exclude you, stereotype you, all of that, those microaggressions. Or you can be followed in stores or over-policed or denied opportunities. So the constant message that you're being given is you're not safe, you're not welcome here. And that takes its toll. That makes you not feel safe. But then there's another thing, and it's bigger than just kind of what you experience personally. It's the systemic institutional racism that's been part of the West and much of the world. And so for your skin color, under-resourced schools, a healthcare bias, employment barriers, and then you have over-representation in prisons, under-representation in leadership of your skin color. Then you're made to feel invisible, or everybody sees you. There's a hypervisibility. Then you go through being ignored, erased, tokenized. You feel like you must perform or you must shrink in order to survive. And then you're made the scapegoat for all the country's problems. So what's often happening right now is all the problems that we're going through is because of the immigrants. And so you're scapegoated because of that. But there's a third way this takes place, and that's kind of historical intergenerational trauma. So many people who your grandparents, let's say, were traumatized because of their race, they're in slavery, they're in residential schools if you're indigenous. Now what can happen is their children, their grandchildren, without even realizing it, that trauma, that racism is being passed on. And so colonialism, slavery, displacement, forced assimilation, it's carried in the family through the stories, through keeping silent about certain things, not talking about it, looking at white men a certain way, different survival behaviors, all gets passed down. And that can actually re-traumatize the child, make the child feel unsafe. And so this racialized complex trauma, to me, is very common. It's prolific in our culture today. And that's so sad. And it adds a huge challenge for people in recovery. Ideally, recovery takes place in a safe environment. So the greater the safety, the greater the chance to learn new tools, to be authentic, to be healthy, to heal, Safety is so important. But if you grow up in a culture where there's racism and you've got this racialized complex trauma, you're trying to heal and recover in a culture where you don't feel safe. In recovery, you're using one set of tools, new tools that you're learning, but as soon as you go back into the culture, you have to go back to survival tools. So you got to live by two sets of tools. And that makes this so very difficult. So there's lots of information now on racism, and it's excellent. I just want to look at it briefly from the perspective of complex trauma. And so the bottom line to me is racism, however people justify it, it can't be right, but it violates love others the way you want to be loved, the golden rule. So how can it be right when it causes people to treat others differently than they want to be treated? That's to me the bottom line. But let me just talk about racism for a minute. Though racism's impact is real, what is important to me is for people to understand that in physiological or genetic terms, race does not exist. We're all basically the same genetically. Outside of superficial differences in skin color, body morphology, hair, or facial features, we're all the same. So those things don't create races. There's differences within people with white skin, different hair color, different eye color, and we don't make distinctions around that. And so genetically, there's no such thing as race. So bottom line is there's not one race that's superior to another. Racism needs to believe that people of different race are inferior. Racism needs to believe that there's one race that is superior and everybody else is inferior. They need to be able to give these other people with differences derogatory negative qualities. And so if you can't prove it genetically, where then does racism come from? This whole concept. I think it's important to realize the word race doesn't really enter kind of into meaningful dialogue until the 18th century. And so it wasn't even like a word or concept before that. So where does it come from? This has come out of some research over the years, but historically the idea of race came from the impulse of European capitalism, colonialism to enrich itself by subjugating, enslaving, and if necessary, destroying the indigenous people on other continents. So what it's saying with colonialism is we have to say we're superior to other cultures. Our culture is better than theirs. They're kind of heathen cultures. Our morals are better than theirs. Our religion is better than theirs. We have more wealth, that makes us better than them. We have better lifestyles, that makes us better than them. So we're superior to them. So now we can look down on them. Now we can try to convert them to our way of life or destroy them, genocide them. And we can basically plunder their resources to feed us, to make us even wealthier. So what I want to look at from the complex trauma world, what's underneath all of that? What's underneath this whole mindset? And I think it's complex trauma and shame. So it's people who feel not good enough, people who feel less than themselves. And they don't like that feeling. So they're looking for a way to feel better about themselves. And what they do is, I need to find constructs. I need to find ways to try to make me superior to others. So let's make a construct of I'm wealthier than you, I'm better than you. If my skin is this color, then I'm better than you. If I come from this country, I'm better than you. If I have this position, I'm better than you. So they develop all these constructs, and it goes even farther than that. If I talk a certain way, then I'm better than you. If I have this religion, then I'm better than you. So they develop all these constructs to try to compensate for their shame. That's the root issue. So I feel inferior, And I want to put that on you. And I want you to carry my shame. And I want to punish you for my shame because I'm too afraid to face it myself. That's to me what's really happening in racism. So Jean Paul Sartre said this: the anti-Semite is a man who is afraid not of the Jews, but of himself. Shame, anxiety, insecurity. The existence of the Jew merely allows the anti-Semite to focus his anxieties and stifle them. So they project their own inferior feelings and insecurities onto others and then try to punish them for it. James Baldwin, who's a black spokesperson, says this, and I'm putting his words verbatim: what white people need to do is try and find out in their own hearts why it was necessary to have a in the first place. If you, the white people, invented him, then you need to find out why. And that's where I think it's because the white people did feel inferior. They had shame because of their own complex trauma. They didn't feel good enough even amongst themselves. And so they began to develop a culture, a society, constructs to try to feel better than everybody. And the damage it has done. So Kenneth Hardy, a black psychologist, says, in The Assaulted Sense of Self, in this state, the soul of one's being gets perpetually punctured. So every day you got people taking shots at you, putting you down, doing things to hurt you. It's when one's definition of self is defined by someone else. It is when my sense of self is defined by what I am not rather than what I am. So in other words, when you have a shame-based person getting into power, creating a culture and constructs that try to establish that they're superior, that every other race, culture, whatever you want to say, is inferior to them, then they mistreat those people, and now those people develop shame because of the constant danger, the constant put-downs, the constant trauma that they're experiencing. So every place they go now, they have to be vigilant. They have to be on guard to make sure it's safe. They have to now learn to fawn, to adopt roles in order to survive. But deep inside of them, they have a deep rage, a deep anger that is legit. They should be angry because they are not being treated justly, with respect, as equals, with love. It is a very wrong society. Only one person is benefiting, and that's the person in authority. Everybody else is paying for them to stay in that position. There also deep inside is a deep grief, a sadness that life is so wrong, so unfair. They have so many losses. And then because they're constantly in danger, their sympathetic nervous system is always going. And so there's a chronic stress, but then a chronic fatigue that comes out of that. And then that leads to major health issues. And we see that with Indigenous and Black people today. It also leads to mental health issues, chronic depression, anxiety. And then I think it's interesting that when you look at gangs in the world, most of them were created because the people in power looked down on that culture. And so they had to create gangs to protect themselves, to try to get justice for themselves, to try to find jobs, to try to get a place where they were treated as an equal. And so gangs weren't there just to be kind of bad and to get into crime. They were there originally to try to provide a place to protect themselves from the abuse of authority that was happening around them. And then, like I said, they have to live by two sets of tools. With their own safe groups, they can live by love, they can live by healthy tools, but as soon as they're out in culture, they got to go by survival tools. So if you've grown up in this, my heart goes out to you. What do you do to try to walk this path and continue to heal? How do you heal in a world that's not safe for you? So let me give you a couple of things. Number one, name the truth. You see what happens in these cultures where there's the abuse of authority and systemic racism? There's a gaslighting that happens. They try to make it sound like you are inferior, that it's your fault that these bad things are happening, that you're the problem. Those are all lies. That's gaslighting. Call it for what it is. This is racism. This is systemic violence. This is racial trauma. Don't let the gaslighting not be challenged. Then affirm your identity. Say, this is who I am. I am an equal. I am not inferior. I do not need to be ashamed of my color or my culture. And I would encourage people to reconnect with their culture, with their traditions, with their rituals, with their language, with their community, with their ancient ancestral wisdom. Reconnect. And then do things collectively to heal with people in your culture, but also to resist. Because there never will be peace unless there's justice. There never will be a safe life for people unless everybody's treated equally, unless there's justice for everyone. So the nonviolent demonstrations, that kind of resistance can be very, very helpful. But then make sure you have safe spaces for you to be authentic, for you to get healthy. Get therapy with somebody who is culturally competent, who understands what you're going through, who understands the challenges that you face. Then be part of support groups that are on the same path of healing in an unsafe world, who have shared racial experiences. And what many, many people find who've gone through racism and this racialized complex trauma is there's great value in somatic therapy. So breathing and art and pet therapy, yoga, breath work, music therapy, all of those things become such an important piece to begin healing your nervous system and restoring a sense of safety to your body. And so I really encourage you down that path. So again, this is a reality for many people in recovery. It shouldn't be a reality, but sadly it is. Our culture is still unhealthy in many areas regarding systemic racism. I hope this just helps you a little bit. Thank you.